But as I always like to tell my clients, look, transformation, business transformation, digital transformation, all transformations begin and end with people.
Your business's success depends on relationships, relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm super excited to connect with Marvin Dejean. Marvin is a leading business futurist, transformational strategist, and an unapologetic evangelist for outcomes-driven innovation to corporate and social challenges. As the senior managing partner of Gilead Sanders LLC, he spends his time helping organizations and individuals take the quantum leap into the 21st century digital marketplace. Marvin possesses more than 25 years of experience, having held key positions in the corporate world as well as with major not-for-profit organizations. He also has extensive experience as a consultant, specializing in change management, organizational agility, and strategic planning. As a consultant, Marvin has helped some of the world's largest and most recognizable corporations, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations adapt to changing environments. Throughout his career, Marvin has helped organizations create cultures of communication and collaboration. He has brought his strategic leadership guidance and world-class facilitation skills to organizations from Fortune 500 companies to one of the largest school districts in the United States. Marvin earned his BA from the University of Miami and an MBA from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was also a combat medic with the U.S. Army and is a veteran of the Desert Storm and Desert Shield conflicts. Dejean is the author of the soon-to-be-released book, The Big Pivot, Transforming Your Business into a 21st Century Digital Powerhouse. He is a much sought-after expert on the topic of the emerging global workforce and reinventing business models for the 21st century. Marvin enjoys spending his spare time reading and traveling. He is an active volunteer serving on the boards of several educational and civic institutions that strengthen communities through citizen engagement. He is also trilingual. Congrats on creating cultures of communication and collaboration, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful honor to be here.
Thanks. So much there to start with, but I think one of the biggest things that I'm interested in talking with you about is what is the mindset shift that leaders have to take in order to succeed in the 21st century?
So that is a very, very important question. And I would say probably the most critical question for companies and organizations looking to reinvent themselves for the 21st century. In my work, we call 21st century businesses intelligent organizations. And the reason we call them intelligent organizations is because the organization is going to behave in a manner that is radically different than anything we've seen in the past 200 years. So what do I mean by that? It's going to be where technology, as you can see already, is moving away from the periphery and becomes the driving force of every single organization in the future. So whether we're talking AI, blockchain, IoT, all other types of technologies that are emerging, all these technologies are going to take center stage inside organizations. So they're going to drive a lot of decision making. They're going to automate a lot of rote work that we used to do, and they're going to be moving much faster than we humans have ever been able to do. So that alone, Karl, changes the very nature of an organization. So we as people inside that organization are going to have a very, very different type of relationship between each other and machines. So we're looking at an organization, intelligent organizations that are really going to be human and machine driven. So what does that mean for us as humans, as the traditional roles that we used to play inside of organizations are no longer there or are being replaced by machines. And we are now faced with having to do different types of decision making, different types of relationship with other human beings inside the organization, and being able to deliver value for clients and customers and other stakeholders. So that requires a different kind of mindset for leaders and individuals inside of organizations to think about how to manage not only people and machines, but to know what is my new role as a leader inside of an organization. In addition to that, you have to think about what does that mean, not only as a leader, but also looking at the organization differently. In the past, in the 20th century, we looked at organizations as a very hierarchical and mechanical and transactional organization, right? So we knew exactly in a very, very, dynamic or at least expected timeline where things took 10, 20, 30 years to change, we had the time to make those kind of hierarchical decisions. In a new era where things are moving very fast, where the competition is global, where you are competing not just with the person in the same industry with you, but with technology that can also eat away at your margins or some of the value that you're creating, that requires an organization that moves and makes decisions much radically different. So you're moving away from a hierarchical model to one that is more linear, the one that is agile, the one that morphs in a matter of minutes or seconds based on data that is coming in from all over the place and from internal data that's coming in from its people. So that's a radically different departure from what we've ever known. So the mindset shift is not only about our relationships with human and machine, but also how we view the organization of the future, which is a very subtle, what I call a permanent 365, 24/7 organization that is constantly either emitting value and receiving data at the same time and constantly morphing based on what's around it. So that's a very radical departure from what we've known.
Yeah, I even have a hard time just kind of wrapping my head around like how that would work. And I think that it's got to be when you're working with companies and working with leaders who are interested in making these changes, there's got to be a lot of communication and understanding and communicating how the humans are going to be working with machines that way, because I think it sounds like such a radical shift that I know people are naturally resistant to change and kind of fear with like the new things that are paradigm shifts of this magnitude.
Yes.
So what is your approach to communicating and transitioning through these sort of changes with businesses? Because there is the need to speed up or the need to keep up with the pace while still understanding that like the limits of kind of what humans can handle when it comes, like our brains can handle, and managing the change. So how do you go about working with the human element to try and get people on board or help them through this process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And usually when we talk about barriers or challenges that organizations have when we're working with them, that's usually the first thing, right? Is mindset shift. It's the capability of humans to be able to make that kind of a paradigm shift that quickly, right? Because as humans, we are faced with internal fears. We're faced with our capabilities. We're faced with what the social contract that we have with others inside the group. So all of these things are not being stated out loud, but they're calculus in our heads. So as the competition in the technology becomes inevitable, leaders are going to be faced with that choice of having to get their people on board to move in that direction rapidly, because the market is going to force them to do that. But as I always like to tell my clients, look, transformation, business transformation, digital transformation, all transformations begin and end with people. The biggest mistakes I've seen organizations do is they try, for example, taking AI or any type of technology, and they're trying to overlay it on this hierarchical model that they're used to. And usually you get resistance, you get people being afraid, you get people resisting either passively or aggressively against that change, because in their minds, they don't know what that means for them. right? In that future, when that technology takes over some of the work that I do, what is my importance to the organization? What can I do? Do I learn new skills? Do I upskill, reskill? How long before I'm completely out of a job because the technology is taking that over? So as leaders, that mindset shift is to understand that you start and end with people. So first and foremost is to begin with a strategic visioning of how the organization is going to operate in the future. And you don't do that in a vacuum. You need to co-create that vision with everyone and communicate that constantly. This is the reason why we have to change. And this is where we see we're going, using technology. Now, once you've done that, the opportunity is to say, okay, we don't intend to fire people. We don't intend to remove you or replace you with technology. If anything, we want to enhance your work with technology. But how does that work? How does that look like, right? So what are the things that we're doing right now that is stopping us from being efficient, from speed to market? And what are the things that technology are going to do very well? And here's how we think that your role is going to shift in that future. So your role is going to be a lot more collaborative with other groups in order for us to be a lot more efficient. We're going to give some of the work that you used to do to the technology or to the platform because it does it faster, better, and quicker. But how do we reconcile both the work that you're doing now, right? Am I going to have to upskill you, reskill you, along with the technology in order for us to be able to go to speed to market? So communication, change management, and then meeting people where they are is so critical to any kind of business transformation, right? So when legacy companies are looking at transforming, it's not the old model of, hey, let's just throw in the technology. Oh, people take it or leave it. No, because if you don't have the people right there along with you, you're going to fail. I can guarantee you that because I've seen it so many times in the work that we've done.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable to share that starts and ends with people, and you have to meet people where they are, because it's a huge mistake. I think a lot of current existing leaders don't know how to do that. They haven't done that at all because it's the way they've learned how to lead hasn't taught them those skills. And so when they try to, like I said, layer on AI to the existing hierarchy without communicating, without consulting with the people that it's going to be impacting or supposedly need to be using these things, then there's all these, like I said, the uncertainty and fear of being replaced, and all these complications that happen because the communication wasn't clear, and they're not committing to the hierarchy change. They're just trying to layer in this thing to try and kind of bandwagon kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And it causes and then they mistakenly think it'll replace people. Like, they don't realize how the hierarchy doesn't mash with the business model that they need anymore. Like you said, they need this more like linear, and it actually goes into some of it might also, like, this sort of transformation at a larger level, I think, will also help with solve some of the issues that a lot of companies are dealing with when it comes to middle management squeezes and pressures, because there's these existing hierarchies and there's all, like, they're so big and rigid, and they're not able to adapt and keep up. And so there's this pressure on it. And so instead of just trying to force more people in and replace people with technology, replacing the whole hierarchy is going to be the way that alleviates all these problems, because you're not dealing with all the legacy inefficiencies that the old kind of 20th century way of doing business has. But it is, again, you have to start and end with that communication with the people. Because if your team's not on board, it's never going to happen. And I think that's a very, very interesting way of framing the transformation as like the complete hierarchical overhaul, and not just a throw technology in and expect it to work.
Yeah. And that's the biggest mindset shift for people, right? As a leader, my 20th century model was not only hierarchical, but it was built for a time where we had big factories and people were working with widgets. and they did, if the process calls from A, B, and C or D, people dealt with part A, part B, part C, and part D. That worked well in a very static environment, right? But when you're in a dynamic environment and things are moving really, really fast, and you've got technology really speeding things up, as a leader, I'm not micromanaging anybody's task anymore, right? Because that task is being done either by the machine or by the people who are really using the data and the insight from the machine to make quick decisions. So if I have 30, 40 people that I'm overseeing, I don't have time to oversee 30, 40 people. Those days are gone, because that time that I was overseeing those rote tasks, the market has shifted just in that second. And my competition is either overtaking me, or my client, is looking for something and you can't give it to them in time. They're going somewhere else. And that competition becomes global. So that pressure, that evolutionary pressure of the market is real. So in order for you to really respond to that, forget about trying to incorporate a technology on top of a hierarchical model or a 20th century model. You have to think about a 21st century model. In the 21st century model, as a leader, I am leading autonomous teams. I am leading innovative teams. As a leader, I am not holding people accountable. I am building accountable people in the team. So they know their vision, they know the vision, they know where we're going, they know the mission, they know what we're trying to do, they know their tasks from their OKR and objective and key results. So as a leader, my only job, or one of my main jobs, is becoming the 21st century to focus on quality and deadline. That's it. So what is the quality of the work, the standard that we're supposed to meet? And then here's the deadline by which we have to meet it. And then my job is to really optimize that team, right? That agile team to its highest level, remove any kind of barriers that they have. Really, what do they need in order for them to operate at a very high level as they iterate their process over and over again and deliver high value at a very high speed to market? That's the leadership of the 21st century.
Exactly, because by the time the leader gets the report from the team and it gives them like the guidance, and it's already out of date, the thing's already done. And I love that. It's about not holding people accountable, but building an accountable team and having that autonomy. I think that's also just what more employees want from people they work with, like the companies they work with. And so I think it is overwhelming, the idea of just the whole paradigm shift of the way businesses are structured. Yep. It needs to happen. And I absolutely agree that that's the solution to a lot of the kind of nagging, unsolved problems in a lot of existing corporations and businesses. Yep. Is just as it comes from this root inoperable, like hierarchical structures that no longer are relevant and work in today's marketplace. So right. Real quick, if someone is interested in getting started on this process, what's kind of like a good first step for them to take that they can kind of get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so we use a framework, right, to really help organizations think thoroughly about where to spend their time, their money, their people, and their resources, right? Because it's overwhelming. It's like everyone is drinking out of a fire hose, right? So for us, when we approach organizations and we talk about, doing this kind of transformation, again, we meet people where they are. However, there are certain key areas. So we came up with 7 areas that we think organizations, if you're going to spend time, money, people, and resources in transforming your business, these are at least the 7 areas that you should be thinking about. And we've encapsulated into sort of like a mathematical equation, if you want, called TIP 2M. So think of TIP parentheses 2M. So to the 2M power, right? And really what it stands for, TIP, is T for technology, the new technology that's coming up and that's really going to go from the periphery to driving organization. What is that technology? How do I incorporate it? The second T is for trends, really focusing on not strategizing for the future, but strategizing from the future. right? The future is radically different. So if you're using the past to tell you how to do strategy, you're already behind the eighth ball. So strategize from the future. The first I is for innovation. Everyone in the organization needs to be trained on how to innovate. It's not the R&D's department anymore. It's not the innovation. Everyone needs to understand what innovation is and can incorporate it inside the organization. The second I is for insights, data, rules. You can't incorporate AI. You can't incorporate anything that the technology needs data. So we need insights from that data. So really developing a single source of truth inside the organization that rules all data, right? The first P is for people, right? So we focus on both the customer experience and the employee experience, right? So that they encompass people all over, both inside and outside the main stakeholders. The second P is for platforms. Everything is going to move into platforms, services, products, interaction, ecosystems. Everything will live and die on platforms. So developing your platforms and understanding how they operate. And outside of that, the M stands for mindset shift, really changing the culture inside the organization to be much more collaborative, focusing on agility, focusing on innovation, and really making data the holy grail that operates the entire organization. Once we shift our mindset to see the organization as a living, breathing entity, as opposed to this mechanical thing that we're adding pressure to, it changes the way we see the organization and how it operates both inside and outside in the marketplace. So those, if I were to say to anyone, focus on those 7 areas and you're well on your way to transforming yourself into an intelligent organization.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Marvin. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Marvin, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B to B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.